Here's how National Review summarized it. They said it was only 3 years ago that New York's Democratic legislature drew up a map so brazenly contemptuous of basic rules that govern a district's contiguousness that the state's Democrat-dominated Court of Appeals threw it out. The New York Times at the time called those maps comically contorted. That's their quote. So your state's highest court at the time, all the judges appointed by Democratic governors, they threw the maps out. So fair to say Democrats have done what they're now accusing Republicans of doing.
No, we followed the rules. We do it every 10 years. We base it on census.
But the court said you didn't follow the rules.
Well, we did follow the rules.
So the court was wrong?
Well, we followed the rules. And we didn't intend to do this again until the 2032 elections. But because we're in a different situation altogether that demands that leaders stand up and say, I'm not going to let our democracy be eroded away because there's a blatant power grab to maintain power in our nation's capital. This is what I call a legal insurrection. Legal insurrection. Just let the rules stay the way they are. We'll do it the way we always have. But here we have Texas, and now going to other states. J.D. Vance, why aren't you looking out for how to lower costs like you promised? Instead, he's going like a lapdog around the country into different states saying, oh, can we pick up some here? Can we pick up some here? Because they know they're going to lose next year. That's the only reason they're engaging this. And also might be a nice distraction from people asking, all of a sudden this happens when they refuse to release the Epstein files. So I, along with a lot of people in New York, are saying, what's that all about? Is this just another red herring? So no one's buying this. Just Texas, knock it off. We'll knock it off, and let's get back to governing. But you want to play these games? We're not going to sit on the sidelines. We're New Yorkers. We fight back.
Okay. You mentioned...
Let me ask you, how can gerrymandering both be a threat to democracy and also the way to save it?
Well, there's no question that gerrymandering is a threat to our democracy. It allows politicians to pick their voters as opposed to citizens choosing their representatives. But we are now in a situation where we find ourselves where authoritarian moves are being made by the White House through various states, Texas most prominent among them. And there has to be a response to that. What I've said is that we have to protect our democracy now if we ultimately want to be able to save it. And so taking the reasonable steps that have been proposed in California, I think it makes a great deal of sense in this moment, a temporary way in which to respond to that which is happening in Texas, with the thought that after this crisis is passed, we get back to the fight against gerrymandering by anybody.
Boy. So we got to talk about a rare case of journalism from the mainstream liberal media in this interview featuring Democrat Governor JB Pritzker and Kristen Welker of NBC News, as JB Pritzker is housing the fugitive Democrats who decided to run away from Texas in protest of Texas redistricting their state, making their state more democratic and representative of the people. Because remember, while Democrats are boo-hoo whining, crying about Republicans rigging the midterms, right? Democrats already have Congress rigged in their favor, right? Things are already rigged in favor of Democrats when you understand the fact that, one, the census counts illegals, okay? And two, on top of that, the 2020 census was not accurate. And because it was not accurate, Republicans don't have as many seats as they should have. Okay, so Democrats are already overrepresented, or Democrat states are already overrepresented in Congress. And on top of that, Democrats gerrymander their own states against Republican representation in Congress.
Yeah, so another crazy thing that I had no idea about, but everybody, even Democrats actually admit this, that the census in 2020 had a major statistical error. And what that meant is that you actually undercounted a few states that are Republican, like Florida and Ohio. You overcounted some blue states. And so what I understand, if you actually did the census anew right now, you would have 10 additional Republican seats and 9 fewer Democrat seats. And really what we're living with, Maria, is the consequence of 40 years of institutional control in the Democratic Party. These guys have fought very dirty for a very long time, and they haven't just won elections and enacted laws that we may not agree with. They have tried to rig the game for Democrats and against Republicans. And thankfully, under President Trump's leadership, you finally see some spine. You finally see some backbone in the Republican Party to fight back against these very aggressive Democratic dirty tricks. But the only way for us to do it is to actually go and do the hard work to reset the scales a little bit. What we want to do is redo the census, but importantly, we want to redistrict some of these red states, and we want to make the congressional apportionment fair in this country. Again, you cannot do it unless Republicans actually take some very decisive action in the months to come. We think they will, and we're obviously supporting them every step of the way.
But do you worry that as Republicans do that, the Democrat blue states are going to do the same thing, and then you'll have redistricting in California, New Jersey, and so on?
You know, Maria, there's just not a whole lot of juice left out of that lemon. The Democrats have already gone as far as they possibly can. Let me give you a crazy statistic. So I believe that it's in New Jersey, Illinois, New York, California, and there's one other Democrat state where you take those 5 states, you have a large number of Democrat representatives. But here's the crazy statistic. President Trump won 43% of those 5 states, and Democrats have something like 85% of the representatives out of those states. You cannot gerrymander these far left states anymore, and that's the whole point. We have unilaterally disarmed in the Republican Party. We have said to the Democrats, if you want to rig the game in your favor in blue states, go ahead. We're going to do nothing to fight back against it. That's crazy. It makes it harder for us to pass our agenda. It makes it harder for us to win elections. And most importantly, it gives Democrats this ability to run roughshod over the country without any pushback from the American people. The democratic system in this country is broken because who you vote for doesn't necessarily get reflected in who your representatives are. We're just trying to rebalance the scales and, frankly, push back against a very unfair system created by the Democrats.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, I wanted to mention something that might be helpful to some of you if you've ever been in a situation where you've been injured, or whether in an accident or dealing with a legal issue, you know how overwhelming it can be to figure out where to turn. That's precisely why I wanted to talk about our valued sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. They understand that in this country, every individual deserves a fair shot, and that means having formidable representation when you need it the most. Morgan & Morgan stands up for everyday Americans fighting for the justice you deserve if you end up working with them. They're America's largest injury law firm, and they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. That's not just a number. That's a testament to their unwavering dedication to getting results for those who've been wrong. Now, what truly resonates with me about Morgan & Morgan is their core philosophy. They don't get paid unless they win your case. It's about accountability and results, and ensuring that the little guy has the same access to powerful legal representation as anyone else without upfront costs. They believe in fighting for individual rights and ensuring that hardworking Americans aren't left behind. So if you or a loved one has been injured or needs a strong advocate to navigate a difficult legal battle, don't face it alone. Because when you hire Morgan & Morgan, it's like hiring a legal army that has your back. You can start your claim now by clicking the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen from your phone's camera. Standing up for what's right for your family and for your future is always the conservative choice. A big thank you to Morgan & Morgan for their sponsorship and for supporting content that champions American values. Now, let's dive back into it. Yeah. So Democrats have already gerrymandered their states to the point where they can't really gerrymander them anymore in order to try to accumulate more seats, okay? So what are Democrats really upset about? Because clearly they're hypocrites when it comes to this issue. Well, they're upset about what they're always upset about when they start boohoo, whining, and crying, which is the fact that this means they're going to lose power and control, right? If Republicans successfully redistrict their states, they're going to lose power and control. And that is what Democrats are really, really, really concerned about.
Absolutely. And I just think it's super clear that Republicans care about power and nothing else. And for far too long, Democrats have cared about being right, coloring within the lines, following rules. And power has always been a secondary consideration. We need to absolutely flip that around and focus on power exclusively. It's why I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing by Governor Newsom in California, Governor Pritzker in Illinois, even Governor Hochul in New York. They're talking about seizing the initiative and redrawing their congressional boundaries to maximize Democratic Party advantage. We got to fight fire with fire. I mean, we wish the refs were going to call the fouls, that there were going to be penalties for what they are doing right now, but the refs have left the arena.
Yeah, they're or corrupted.
And to fight this out and to win. We got to be focused on it.
Yeah. So what you have here is the pot calling the kettle black, right? Beto, okay, what is his real name? Francis or something like that? Beto, okay. This guy is boohoo, whining, crying, talking about, well, Republicans are just trying to take more power and control. And once again, what we have here is projection from Democrats, right? Because what they actually really mean is that Republicans are trying to take more power and control from us, right? The power and control that we stole from them by gerrymandering our states first, right? That is what he actually really means, okay? That's what Democrats are really concerned about, okay? More so than anything here. So with that being said, that leads me to this interview with Kristen Welker and JB Pritzker. And Kristen Welker, again, is going to do some rare good journalism and confront JB Pritzker with the hypocrisy of the Democrats boohoo, whining, and crying about Republicans, quote unquote, rigging the midterm elections by gerrymandering their states against Democrats. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Well, let's talk about the issue at hand here. Texas Republicans being urged by President Trump, as you just said, are pushing this mid-decade redistricting plan. Their goal is to add as many as 5 GOP seats. In response to Democrats like yourself are thinking of drawing your own maps to boost seats in blue states. Take a listen to what Texas Governor Greg Abbott told my colleague Ryan Chandler about that. Take a look.
What's your message to governors like Newsom, Hochul, Pritzker, who have said they will retaliate if Texas does this?
They have no capability. They've already gerrymandered their states in ways in which they don't have hardly any Republican members of Congress. Look at the map of Illinois. It's drawn in such a way that they can't even squeeze out another Republican. It's a joke.
What's your response to Governor Abbott?
Well, Governor Abbott is the joke. He's the one who is attempting mid-decade here at a time when, frankly, all of us are concerned about the future of democracy. He's literally helping whittle it away and licking the boots of his leader, Donald Trump. Here in Illinois, we followed the law. We provided a map and passed a map that follows the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Illinois. He's attempting to thwart federal law and take away 5 seats that are in the hands of black, brown, minority congresspeople and the people that they represent. He's taking those votes away. He's violating the Constitution. And all of us need to stand up and speak out and make sure that it's understood across the country that what they're trying to do in Texas is illegal.
Well, Governor, it might be illegal. It's not unprecedented, though, or it might be rare, I should say. But Texas actually tried to redraw districts mid-decade before in 2003, and the U.S. Supreme Court actually upheld the map in that case with the exception of 1 district. So the argument that Abbott is making is it's not illegal, though they are doing it certainly in an off year. But I do want to look at the map of Illinois. Let's take a look at this. Despite President Trump winning 44% of the statewide vote in 2024, Republicans hold only 3 of Illinois' 17 districts. These districts seem to be designed to maximize Democratic advantage. What do you say to those who argue that it's hypocritical for you to criticize Texas for partisanship when your state also drew maps to boost your party's standing?
Well, remember that what Texas is trying to do is, again, violate the Voting Rights Act. We didn't. We held public hearings, legislative hearings. People attended them. They spoke out. There was a map that was put out. There were actually changes made to the map. And a map was passed. And it was done at the end of the census, the decennial census. So that's how it's done in this country. You talked about how rare it is to do what he's doing. Yes, it is. What's even rarer is to do it at the behest of the President of the United States, who's clearly attempting to and says that he deserves to have 5 more seats. He's wrong. And he's attempting to change the game because, again, he passed this big, ugly bill. It's hyper unpopular in Texas, among people in Texas and across the country. And he knows he's going to lose the Congress in 2026. That's why he's going to his allies and hoping that they can save him. And we've all got to stand up against this. It's cheating. Donald Trump is a cheater. He cheats on his wives. He cheats at golf. And now he's trying to cheat the American people out of their votes.
Well, look, sticking on your state's map, every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction. The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights is what Texas is attempting to do. That's what's wrong with their efforts right now. And the fact that the president of the United States knows it and nevertheless is asking them to do it. That is what's wrong with what we're seeing right now. Democracy is at stake, and these Texas Democrats are standing up to what the GOP is attempting to do, which is to steal seats because they know what they've done is wrong. They know that they've made an enormous mistake.
Wow. 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 I don't think Democrats understand just how silly they sound and they look trying to defend their own hypocrisy here. Because Kristen Welker actually did a very good job at laying out the hypocrisy of the Democrats, okay? This guy claims that what Republicans are doing is a threat to democracy, but yet he cannot clearly articulate what is different about what Republicans are doing versus what Democrats have already done. There's no difference. He keeps claiming that, well, Trump and Republicans, they're violating the Voting Rights Act. Well, weren't Democrats the same ones arguing that the current map in Texas is a violation of the Voting Rights Act, right? I mean, that's also part of the reason why the Trump administration is getting them to change it, right? At least that's their stated reason, okay, from the DOJ. It's like, hey, you might want to redraw these maps, right? So, again, if the current map is a violation of the Voting Rights Act, then, again, why are you upset with them redrawing their maps? Well, the reason why they're upset with Republicans redrawing their maps is because it's not about it being a violation of the Voting Rights Act. It's about Democrats losing more power and control, right? Regardless of whether or not it complies with the Voting Rights Act or not. Because clearly, as you can see, Democrats have no issues whatsoever trying to undermine the will of voters, okay, and trying to pick their voters rather than the voters picking them. They have no issues whatsoever doing that in states like Illinois, in which every research institution has concluded has some of the most gerrymandered maps. In fact, a roadmap for everything that can go wrong with gerrymandering, right? That's Illinois. Again, that's the irony of Democrats fleeing to Illinois, right, over gerrymandering, which is that they're literally fleeing to one of the most gerrymandered maps in the country, right? It's kind of crazy how that works, right? You're fleeing to one of the most gerrymandered states in the country in protest of gerrymandering in your own state, but you have no issues with Democrats gerrymandering Illinois in favor of them keeping power and control. And again, that's essentially what this comes down to. This is why he can't articulate an argument as to why this is actually different, right? He can't really explain it because, again, it's not about any type of principle. They're not standing on principle. They're just standing on this is a threat to our power and control. Therefore, we're upset, right? That's what's going on here. Now, I can articulate one of the biggest differences between what Republicans and Democrats are doing because, first and foremost, I am not a turn the other cheek type of guy, right? If Democrats are going to do it in order to get more power and control than they should have, then Republicans need to even a playing field. That's the only way that you stop it because clearly Democrats have no problems doing this in order to gain an initial advantage, right? Again, Democrats started this. Don't let them tell you anything different. They started this, okay? So, yeah, in order to level the playing field, this has to be done. just because, again, Democrats have done this. Also, on top of that, like we mentioned before, the census is incorrect, okay? And because the census is incorrect, Democrats or Democrat states, blue states, have more seats than they should have in Congress, right? So you have a couple of wrongs that need to be corrected. And I think that redistricting by Republicans is a good way of trying to correct those wrongs. This is why I don't have a problem with it, right? Because you're correcting wrongs. They're making their maps. They're making our Congress more representative of the people, which, you know, Democrats, since they are crusaders for democracy, you would think they would agree with this, right? They would agree to make a map more representative of voters, okay? But apparently, again, they're against that when it's a threat to their power and control, right? Democrats don't want to right wrongs when the wrongs benefit them. Again, this is why, you know, they're not standing on principle. This is why this governor sounds like a bumbling fool trying to explain the difference between what Republicans are doing and what Democrats did. And he has no real explanation outside of, well, it's different when we do it, right? That's all he has to say. Well, it's just different when we do it, right? It's just different, right? It's different because, again, it's Democrats. So who knows? Maybe this is the best that Democrats have to offer, right? I don't know, okay? Because Pritzker is supposed to be one of the dark horses to look out for, right? He's I think he's a billionaire, blue state governor, looking to run for president of the United States. So he's one of these guys that we got to watch out for, right? But again, based off his performance in this interview, he doesn't seem too impressive, right? I think that Gavin Newsom is a much better snake oil salesman. But, you know, then again, maybe Pritzker's record is not as bad as Gavin Newsom's. Regardless, again, my point is that it's not looking good for Democrats, right? If this is the best that you got, right, it's not looking good, okay, in my opinion. I think that the American people can see through this hypocrisy from these Democrats that, once again, you have Democrats boo-hooing and crying about stuff that they do, right? I mean, it never fails. These same people who are so loud about, you can't claim that the 2020 election was rigged or unless you're an insurrectionist. They claimed that the 2016 election was rigged, right? They claimed that basically every election that they've lost since Bush was rigged. Now they're claiming that the midterms are rigged before the midterms happened, right? And then after the midterms, they're going to be claiming that the 2028 election is rigged, right? Democrats do this every single time they feel like they're about to lose, but then they point the finger, they boo-hoo, whine, and cry when the other side makes claims about the election, as if Democrats haven't been doing that for decades now. Again, the hypocrisy is just sickening at this point. It's so in your face that even when you have MSNBC, right, or NBC, when you have an NBC anchor calling you out on hypocrisy, saying, listen, you kind of sound like a hypocrite, right? Democrats kind of sound like hypocrites. You know it's bad, right? You know that it is very obvious, okay, that Democrats do not have any room to talk or to boo-hoo on and cry on this issue. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.